Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm Jimmy Young with Pro Cannabis Media, and I'm all over the place in this town this week. We're here for MJ Unpacked this afternoon. And of course, this is all part of our Green Rush Live program that we do every week on Pro Cannabis Media. And I'm so happy to actually have a guy that was on a Zoom interview with us months ago on our show. His name's Demitri Downing. He's from Arizona. He's a bit of a legend in the cannabis space in Arizona. Demitri, are you comfortable with legendary status?
Just Arizona?
No. That's all I know you from for Arizona. But no. You're good.
I just like to say a bit of a legend in the cannabis space.
There you go.
I'm just kidding. No, I mean, we need people out there that are advocating, that are informing, that are trying to understand this, not just from a business level, but a philosophical level, a human level, and in all sorts of different capacities. I have a unique skill set from my training at Boston University, epistemology major.
When were you in Boston?
The 90s. That's when we used to ship marijuana. My family did, yes. We shipped marijuana in UPS, 4 pounds at a time as lighting fixtures to a place that I worked in Boston. They can't prosecute that for me now. They can't prosecute me for that now, so that was a long time ago. I'm not afraid to admit it. Lots of people did it. We were entrepreneurs. We were businessmen. We saw ourselves in the middle of a trade route, and we did that. And that was the early 90s. Went to UA Law School after that, prosecuted from 1998 to 2010, economic development for 2 years, and then jumped into the cannabis industry with my family in 2012. So I had the opportunity to use all those skills, all that knowledge, all that I acquired for all those years to understand and evolve within the cannabis and understand the cannabis industry and personally evolve in the cannabis industry. So I'm grateful to the cannabis industry beyond belief.
And I believe it too. I just want to check. Yep, the little light's on. That means we're rolling. It's good. My bad for not checking, but when you're a one-man band, you do what you can do. Arizona. I use that state as an example of a state that I thought got it right by automatically offering adult use recreational licenses to the already existing medical community. Since that has happened, there's been some pushback on that. How do you view on how your state, Arizona, handled the introduction of adult use recreational sales in that market in this state?
Well, I understand this stuff all too well. And your question, while important and a detail of the cannabis history, doesn't matter. We didn't get it right. We didn't get it wrong. We could have done it better. We could have done it worse.
But you did it.
We did it, and it happened. And we transitioned the medicinal market. And I'll get into what I'm talking about here in a second, because this is what I'd really love to talk about, because it's something we're doing here at MJ at the Marijuana Week at MJ Unpacked and MJ BizCon. We're launching Media USA because we see it as a paradigm shift that's coming up, and we'll talk about that in a second. But in Arizona, obviously, we transitioned from medicinal to adult use. A medicinal marijuana market structure was created in 2010. A lot of people got licenses in 2012, including my family. 2013, 14, 15, invested capital, evolved, et cetera. How and why that market structure was created that way is a fascinating aspect of history. It was a necessary thing. It was a public policy thing. But we got lots of things out of the legalization of cannabis that we didn't need. And now comes this paradigm shift to get rid of those. And we'll get to that in a second. Legalization, the transition from medicinal to adult use, can happen any way that you possibly can do it. And there's a lot of different ways. Initiative, referendum, legislative. And how do you treat the existing players that are under the medicinal licenses? What rights do they have? What rights are they entitled to? This is an economic situation, an economic question that even economists can't answer because it's never happened before. It's never happened before. Washington did it one way. Colorado did it one way. The Arizona, we tried it one way in 2016. That went down. I advocated for one way in 2014 and 15 as we were writing that initiative. And that ended up going down. And it turns out I was wrong. Now I'm the exact opposite side now that I've learned and come to understand what's truly is important. And we'll get to that in a second. So in Arizona, we passed the Spartan Safe Act in November 2020, which was basically a flip-to-switch model, which is something I had actually designed back in 2014 when we were just trying to flip the switch from medicinal to adult use. Why? So those who have could continue to have more. And it wasn't about excluding anyone. It was just about protecting our own interests. And that's okay. No one should ever hate or be mad at those who want to protect what they have. They just need to share and teach the better paths forward that we could all work towards. And this is something, again, that I realized after study, and I'll go through the whole journey if you want me to. But so we did a flip the switch model. I didn't write that initiative. I didn't even review that initiative. 168 people looked at that initiative. I never went one day to look at that initiative. And as it was being written, 2019, dropped, I think, in March of 2000, past 2020, dropped in like March 2020. I got the dates screwed up here. But anyways, there was time to review it. But I never went and reviewed it because I knew that there was that flip the switch model. And that fundamentally is not what the cannabis community needs to be pushing. And it's a big problem that's been created by how we're legalizing and how we're developing these market structures. It was a flip the switch model. It went into place. Those who have medicinal licenses are given adult use licenses, and that's fine. And those retail stores open, and there's manufacturing associated with it, cultivation associated with it. They're all grandfathered in. And for shits and giggles, somebody wrote in, throw 26 social equity licenses because it,
It should probably help the people that have been most destroyed by the war on drugs that failed.
Yeah, so in January it implemented, it was smooth. I'll give you this.
Right.
Pragmatically speaking, that's a smooth way to go about it. But is it the right way to go about it? And that's where you really get into the question of market structure, economics, free enterprise, limited licensing, and all these questions that the cannabis industry is in wrestling about, which is something that we're taking on next as we're launching Meta USA.
All right, now you get to tell us about what you're launching and tell me why. I know why. Now explain to me what it does.
So you can understand my passion. And what happened was that I met so many individuals, not just social equity individuals, and I met like 4,000 social equity individuals over the last 2 years because we have a great Meta social equity program, Canna Mentor program. That's all online. That we don't need to talk about that. It's on Meta's website. We've been doing great virtual stuff for the last year and a half, blah, blah, blah. So we've been making lemonade out of those 26 social equity licenses by trying to reach as many people to make them aware of the possibility that they can enter this lottery, and there's probably 5,000 of them, and then the rest will be disappointed. Anyway, so we met so many social equity eligible individuals, and just individuals like yourself who want to get into the cannabis industry, who want to explore their hopes and dreams and possibilities, not just as a worker, but as a potential entrepreneur. And what is limiting and restricting them from being there? The limited licensing concept of manufacturing, cultivation, retail, delivery, whatever. We so readily accept the limited licensing concept in the cannabis space right now that we don't talk about it, we don't debate it, but it originated in rewarding and appeasing the fears of our enemy, the prohibitionists. So right now what's happening in the cannabis space, and I've been waiting, and now I can finally do it because I found allies that have money. Okay, that's what Meta USA is about. Is people have been investing capital in the existing interstate limited licensing market structures out of necessity, because you can build a grow and make money back in 1 or 2 years, but they don't know really how to deploy long term because they don't know how the transition is going to happen in federal legalization, and they don't know if more licenses are being issued. So what's happening is that you have them, and it's actually not even the businessman's fault generally. The businessman will go to the lawyer and lobbyist and say, I don't know how to plan long term because there's all these regulatory changes coming and they potentially could change. What should I do? What's going to happen? Well, I'm a lobbyist. If you pay me money, I can protect you because I have friends in my pocket at the state legislatures and the federal government, and I can manipulate things. This is what I do. Really? There's a business that does that? Yeah, it's called lobbying. Oh, I was just a nice cannabis entrepreneur, but I'll give you money. So what's happening right now, and I see it happening in Arizona, I see it happening in other states, is you have a lot of these nice cannabis businessmen who are deciding how to move forward in the cannabis space. They're trying to think to themselves, what do I do with the adaptive, the changes that are coming? Do I try to manipulate them? Do I try to adjust them? Do I just accept what's coming? They're juggling with it. And I hear this even from the U.S. Cannabis Council attorney who was telling me, very nice lady, Heather Zazzi's policy genius. She can discuss all sides. And as a matter of fact, I was, fundamentally against her and the notions that she was presenting in 2014-15 when I was thinking to myself, self-interested businessman / half lobbyist, half lawyer. Now I realize how right they were and how they had to do what they had to do. But God bless the MPP. They've done a great job. But what we need is more individuals advocating against limited licensing, against the barriers of entry that exist, against protectionist measures, and in favor of what ultimately is in the best interest of the consumers and the patients, which is an open market, free market. You're saying to yourself, what a challenge. There's all these license holders that expect this and that. The retail component is safe. That's going to be a state and local thing. We're looking more at manufacturing and cultivation and the free flow of brands. Enter the money. Okay, so what is in the interest? In New York City, you have 8 million cannabis consumers, patients, etc. They want the free flow of goods. They want interstate commerce to happen as quickly as possible. They don't understand the nuances that the best way to have interstate commerce is allow somebody to manufacture in California and ship it to New York. That's going to cost less. Then there's people in New York who are like, no, we want manufacturing licenses ourselves. We don't want them to people come in. There's all these complicated nuances. We, as Media USA, we want to advocate for liberty. We want to advocate for choice and what's in the best interest of the consumer and the patient, ultimately the end person. The reason why we have an industry, not the industry. Enter the brands. There's one particular brand in California that I spoke with in March, and he said to me, Demitri, I don't want to deploy $2 million to build a manufacturing center in Arizona. They're telling me another $1 million in Oklahoma, another $2 million in Nevada. I got to fix California. I'm only like 50 dispensaries. I want to be in 800. What do I do? And I said, sir, you know what? I think it's time, because you have to wrestle with how you deploy capital and plan for long term. And we all know interstate commerce is coming within 3 to 7 years. We need an industry that's going to advocate aggressively for interstate commerce. And when interstate commerce comes, hopefully, you won't have to manufacture in all these states. Just adjust to little things like labeling, testing, and packaging, etc. And maybe fight for shelf space at the retailers if we can't get the number of retail locations expanded. But that's a whole other issue. I'm not going to deal with that issue. Retailers out there, don't worry. Media USA is not after you. We're after those who would have protectionist measures that do anything to impede the access of the product, the flower, the brand, the choices, the brands, the MIPS, the vapes, to the consumer and the patient, because this is what this industry is about. It's not about protecting those who have. So
it's giving an opportunity to those who have been most impacted poorly on the failed war on drugs, and giving them an opportunity to get into the business, into the industry.
Well, and yeah, absolutely, and that's better, but that's not as important as giving to the patient.
Access available for the medicine to those who need it.
This isn't about us,
right? Well, I'm a patient too, but I get it too.
And right, and so, but you know, what kind of capitalists, what kind of businessmen care about the patients? Any brand who wants to be associated with doing the right thing, right? With fighting for those ideals, for those principles, for those regulations, for those statutes, for those ordinances that ultimately allow for more choice, more access, lower prices to the patient. Don't you want to be associated with a group like that? That's what we want to do. That's what Media USA is about. That's what we're going to fight for. Basically, freedom. And you might say, somebody out there might say, oh, you know what? He's a dreamer. Well, you know what? Imagine if the cartels had lobbyists. We would still have prohibition, and we would still be stuck in that paradigm. Now we've shifted over to paradigm 2 over the last 10, 12 years, which is the concept that we're kind of wrestling with right now, that we've inherited and kind of accepting. Merit-based applications, limited licensing applications. There can only be a few dispensaries. There can only be a few manufacturers. All that is nonsense. We need to fight for paradigm 3, which is the open markets, which is competition, which is opportunity, because ultimately paradigm 3 is going to be best for the patients and the consumers. I mean, that's just, are we Americans? Are we capitalists?
You're so right. And there's so many issues amongst the capitalist system because, Demitri, I think you understand this. There's a lot of people that put money in, and all they can care about is that ROI, that return on investment. Right. There is no humanity to the dollar. And cannabis forces you to have humanity to your dollar because of the impact it can have on so many people, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you the truth. I was, concerned, interested in the cannabis industry, and I found it very fascinating concept that was occurring this moment in time. Even prohibition, people talk about, that prohibition ended for the alcohol and, an industry was built. There existed an industry before prohibition for alcohol. People,
I think they called that bootlegging, didn't they?
No.
Even before that, moonshine.
Before prohibition for
existed.
alcohol, it existed.
Right.
There was a supply chain. There was retail stores. There was saloons. They were there. Okay, so then prohibition occurred, and then people had something to look back to. We're doing something that's beyond ending prohibition. We're creating a market structure from scratch, and not a lot of people are reflecting upon this. So, that's what's going on here, and that's what keeps me interested. Now, I'm not a cannabis patient myself, but I grew. I started with the model in 2012. Like, damn, my family got the medical license in Sedona. These hippies found a really clever, politically clever way to get high. Good for them. Talked to a bunch of my lawyer, my AZ post-certified Arizona police officer, FBI, BI friends, etc. And because I was a prosecutor. And I realized that anyone who had a card in Arizona wasn't going to be touched. I'm like, shit, my brother's going to make a lot of money. Okay, I'm in. Then I met the guys from Normal. Then I met Michael Weiser. And Michael Weiser, great soul. Him and I had a 3-year journey to understand substance abuse, cannabis policy, the legalization movement, market structures. And we were on opposite sides because I was thinking about money. Michael was thinking about, soul and about people. He didn't give a damn about money. Well, I met him halfway. Okay, because he educated me. He really did. Because I knew nothing. I knew nothing about substance abuse. I knew nothing about my own. I did not know nothing, but I didn't know enough about my own substance abuse. I found yoga because of the cannabis industry, because I started exploring alternative mechanisms. So I'll be damned if anybody's going to take away anybody's right to use cannabis however they see fit to achieve that equilibrium and balance that's going to help them function. Who the hell would do that? Even if you need heroin, it's your thing, bro. Just function. Keep your shit together. Get your job done. Do your work. Be productive. Love your wife. Raise your kids. If you need heroin, if you need to rub your head against the carpet every morning for 5 minutes, it's weird, but do it. Do it. I'm a libertarian. I was okay. So I'm interested, and then comes COVID. The most absurd, hysterical, fear-based reaction to a very legitimate virus that I could possibly imagine. And we had a situation where they were canceling group yoga classes, gyms. They took away my choice as to what I needed for my spiritual, athletic, physical, mental well-being. And when the government does that to you, like the government did that to the cannabis patients, you come to understand the power of the government. COVID weaponized me for the cannabis industry. I have an outlet to give back to the world what it deserves, and it's called freedom. Fortunately for the cannabis industry, I'm involved in cannabis because I'm going to convey that loud as I can for as long as I can. That's why I understand clearly that this movement isn't based on cannabis use. This community isn't based on abusing anything. This community is riding an undercurrent that has existed for tens of thousands of years in human history, since one monkey decided to go from one valley to the next to explore their own options. That undercurrent is freedom. That undercurrent is choice. That undercurrent is seeing the world that you exist in and saying, this is not right. Somebody's taking away my rights. I'm moving on to the next tree, to the next valley, to the next ocean, to the next island across the ocean. That's what we're all about, that spirit. That's what this cannabis community is riding. That's what I'm excited about. So you can thank COVID for that. Otherwise, I would just be like an intellectual economist. Now I'm a fucking crusader. Sorry, can I curse?
You just did, and I don't have a problem with it.
No. It's just getting started.
Well, Demitri, I got to tell you, you're the reason why I got this booth. When Zoe Wilder called me and said, I can get you Demitri, and I said, I loved him when he was on our Zoom call. To meet you in 3D in person has been even more inspirational for me. So I want to thank you for taking the time. You and I could sit here for hours and have these amazing, deep conversations. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to meet you and talk with you, because I really want to figure out a way to get the Demitri Downing show on Pro Cannabis Media. You deserve your own platform, your own show. You pick your own guests. We'd love to have you involved. But I thank you so much for just joining us for the 30 minutes that you just gave us here. You are truly an inspiration to the industry. And I knew that when I first met you. And I can see it when people just through the screen sometimes. So I want to thank you. First of all, how do people get involved, find you, and contact you? That's important. Let's make sure we get that on tape.
I always give out my cell phone number.
I love that about you. And by the way, you've been getting calls all the half hour.
Yeah, 520-909-4334. Demitri Downing at gmail.com. www.mita-az.org is our Arizona organization. We're expanding it to be national. But the Arizona organization is not involved in politics. Okay, just to make that clear. We allow the state to do what the state's going to do. We are involved at the national level where things are still undecided. And, you know, when they've kind of like shaped the way things are, you kind of don't want to come in and kick the house around. That's just not polite. But we have an undiscovered country at the federal level, and we make sure that it gets shaped right from the beginning, and that we encourage individuals to shape it right from the beginning, and we expose individuals who are trying to not shape it right.
These are the reasons. People like Demitri Downing and why I started Pro Cannabis Media. We love telling your story to others out there who are as passionate about this cause as Demitri. Although I will tell you, get in line, because there's nobody more passionate about this than this guy. We're going to have more of Green Rush Live. Don't go away from amazing Las Vegas, Nevada.